What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 3 of Turnbuckle Tuesdays. How is it going out there? I'm Todd. I'm the host. It's been an eventful week. I'm going to apologize in advance if you hear me coughing or if I turn the mic off real fast. I don't want to cough into the microphone and hurt anybody's ears. I got a little sick with the plague back in the end of or mid of last week. But I was able to work on everything for tonight. How's it going out there, everybody? This is Turnbuckle Tuesdays, the twice monthly podcast for pro wrestling history, modern wrestling news and rumors and events, and a little bit of random shenanigans that we can get up to. So, how's it going? We have a little bit of a shorter show this week. Archives are actually really strong, which is really cool. There's a lot of events we're going to talk about. We also only have one person who passed away, and so we'll talk about them. News, because we have the new shows that are our off-week shows. News Interim Roundup, and after the bell, our event show, we can cut down some of the time on there, which is really nice because that seems to be where a lot of the bulk of the show goes to time-wise. And I really want the show to be between an hour and 90 minutes. So if we can shave that down by doing these second shows that are during the off week, so those will be live next week for anything that leads up from end of podcast to next Tuesday. That'll be News Interim Roundup. And then we have some major events going on this coming weekend. I'm going to be a busy boy. Let's just say that I'm going to be very busy. There's going to be a lot of wrestling to watch. Not that that's a bad thing. But I'm going to be releasing probably 3 episodes from this week for After the Bell. Those are not going to be all released on one day. Those are going to be released over a segment on a schedule because I don't hate myself that much. Deadlines are great and all, but I'm not going to burn the candle off that fast. And being able to watch some of them is going to be a little bit difficult as far as I might not be able to watch one until next week, Thursday. So, but we'll talk about that when we get to events. All right, but first and foremost, we are going to spin the wheel of shenanigans. Last episode, we did the indies. And, well, as we do topics, we take them off. And we replace indies this week with celebs. So this is, if we land on that topic, we're going to discuss any celebrities that have been adjacent to or gotten in the ring. There's a lot of them. And there's a huge history of this going back even to Babe Ruth. So it'll be a very interesting topic to talk about if we land on it. But we have the new generation, Jim Crockett Promotions, Women in Wrestling, the old NWA, All Elite Wrestling, the Golden Era, the Families of Wrestling, and celebs. So let's see what the wheel picks for us this week. I swear if it lands in the middle like it did the first week, I'm going to lose my mind. Ooh, the new generation. All right, so the new generation of WWF. This will be a fun topic. This is a topic that I know a significant amount about because I grew up during this era. So I'm going to be able to rant and rave and talk about all of my favorite wrestlers that lead into the Attitude Era. Dope. But before we do that, before we get into that, we need to get into From the Archives. All right, everybody. From the Archives. On July 8th, 1985, the inaugural King of the Ring tournament is held by the World Wrestling Federation. The event took place in Foxborough, Massachusetts. The event first took place as part of a non-television house show circuit and featured WWF mainstays like Tito Santana, the Iron Sheik, Ricky Steamboat, Pedro Morales, the magnificent Don Morocco, and Bob Orton Jr. The whole purpose of stuff like this, the whole purpose of these special events, because they didn't have pay-per-views. they were leading into that kind of closed caption market with WrestleMania, but the King of the Ring was like when they did these kinds of shows, they weren't put on TV. They were supposed to be the draw to get people to these non-televised house shows. Tournament would end with Morocco defeating the Iron Sheik, becoming the very first King of the Ring. The event would then become a yearly staple for the WWF/WWE programming that's still seen today. So we have seen 41 iterations of the King of the Ring tournament. It is one of their summer standards, their late spring, early summer standards. It's had its own pay-per-view. It's been part of other pay-per-views. It's been done just strictly on WWE TV. So this is one of those, it was considered part of the Big Five. So the Big Four are WrestleMania, SummerSlam, Royal Rumble, and Survivor Series. The King of the Ring got brought in as the fifth in the Big Five when they started doing pay-per-views for it. But it's no longer its own pay-per-view. It's typically factored in, especially the finals are factored into other pay-per-views. Like we saw Night of Champions last month in Riyadh. The finals were for the King and Queen of the Ring were done during that. So I personally would like to see a King of the Ring all-night tournament. When they did do it as a pay-per-view, they did the qualifiers beforehand, but they started the tournament and just ran the bracket, and then there was a couple of matches in between, you know. But with both men's and women's, you'd almost have to have two events, almost like you'd need two nights. Anyway. July, okay, so there are two key dates in professional wrestling this time of year. That is July 9th and July 14th. It's weird, but it's wrestling, so it's always going to be weird. July 9th, 1979. According to professional wrestling lore, Pat Patterson won a tournament in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, to become the inaugural WWF Intercontinental Heavyweight Champion. The title has gone on to be a mainstay mid-card title for the WWE, often being placed on the hardest working mid-card wrestler as a means to elevate that specific wrestler and prepare them for the main event. So the mid-card titles recently aren't as prestigious as they used to be. It really depends on who's got the belts. Really, it does. It depends on who's got the titles. But oftentimes the IC, the Intercontinental Championship, is given to the quote-unquote workhorse as a recognition for what they mean to the company, and that the company sees a lot of potential in this wrestler. We can see that right now with Penta having the IC belt. He's always defending it. It's not an open challenge, but he's done a lot more to defend it. He's very much being a workhorse. He's working AAA, he's working SmackDown, he's working Raw. So he really is one, like the most modern embodiment of it. But we're seeing the same thing with the USA title as well on the men's end with Trick Williams. I would like to see them possibly keep that belt on him for a significant long period of time and set a record for it. But that's neither here nor there. That's not the IC title. The US title comes from WCW with the acquisition. The IC title apparently was won in Rio de Janeiro in 1979 by Mr. Pat Patterson, the first inaugural holder. What's really interesting is this is the exact same story the WWF would use when they crowned Buddy Rogers their world heavyweight champion in 1963 when they broke away from the NWA for the first time. This is how they legitimized that belt. So in 1963, Buddy Rogers comes back and he's got the world heavyweight title for the Worldwide Wrestling Federation, because he won it at a tournament in Rio de Janeiro. Almost 16 years to the day before Pat Patterson wins his belt, the Intercontental Championship, and is legitimized. They could have done the funniest thing with the women's belts. They really could have. They could have done a Rio Premium Live event and brought out a new title and done a tournament. Who's to say that WWE doesn't know its own history? But it's a little disappointing, don't you think? July 9th, 2001, with the buying of WCW and ECW by Vince McMahon and shutting down his only two viable competitors, a storyline invasion was created to help justify contracts that were part of the acquisitions. WCW and ECW joined forces in the invasion angle as the alliance under the leadership of Shane and Stephanie McMahon, who in storyline had bought WCW and ECW respectively, as opposed to their father. The storyline culminated in the historic Invasion pay-per-view that happened later on in the month. This was a dark time for WWF, in my opinion. It was arguably one of the worst times to be a fan because it really just sucked. They when Vince would do things like want to be in charge, want to be the guy, he would very often end up screwing himself. Vince needed competition, and he ended up posing himself with it. So, not good at all. July 14th, 1948. In Waterloo, Iowa, Pinky George put together a meeting of Midwestern pro wrestling promoters to form a governing body, the National Wrestling Alliance. With other promoters like Al Haft, Tony Stecker, Harry Light, Orville Brown, Don Brown, and Sam Muchnick, the organization would unify territories under a banner that would have a singular world title. Each regional territory would have their own titles and championships, but the NWA champion would be decided by the board of directors and recognized worldwide. The very first NWA world champion was Orville Brown, as decided by the first NWA Council. The NWA helped organize territories and bring professional wrestling, a type of recognized ideals that became universally acknowledged. The NWA has existed in some form since 1948, and we're looking at 78 years of professional wrestling under that banner now, which is currently owned and operated by Billy Corgan, who has brought back the territory system for the NWA. July 14th, 1984, in the early days of the WWF national expansion, Vince McMahon was able to purchase controlling interests of Georgia Championship Wrestling, including its cable television show World Championship Wrestling on Superstation WTBS, owned by Ted Turner. McMahon would make promises to Turner that the programming would not change, but instead the programming would run taped WWF matches from New York as opposed to the more realistic matches in studio that WCW had been known for, and over time, changed the name of the program to WWF Georgia Championship Wrestling. This is a date known as Black Saturday in the industry. It's the day that Georgia and Southern style wrestling almost died. Now, McMahon would bring back in-studio wrestling begrudgingly in March of '85, but more to pacify Turner as a station owner than as an actual belief in the system. As the WWF ratings began to reflect that the more Southern consumer preferred the more realistic styles of wrestling offered by Ole Anderson and Bill Watts, Ted Turner began promoting more than one company on his channel. Both Mid-South Wrestling and Championship Wrestling from Georgia outperformed the WWF style of programming. Vince would see that he is losing money in the venture, and since he was expanding it through other avenues and needed to finance the upcoming WrestleMania, McMahon sought to sell, meeting with Jim Crockett and selling the time slot to Crockett for $1 million. This was just the beginning of animosities between Turner and McMahon, and is the start of their constant war for wrestling dominance that lasted until the fall of Turner's own WCW, when McMahon would buy the company in 2001. July 14th, 1991. I told you, like, it's weird, and it could just be my brain with pattern recognition, but July 9th and July 14th, two very important days during this time of year in professional wrestling history. Ric Flair leaves WCW due to frustrations with executive management. Flair was released while still holding the World Heavyweight Championship for WCW, also known as Big Goldie or the 10 pounds of gold, and was still in possession of the physical Big Gold belt when he left. Flair was immediately hired by WWF, bringing the Big Gold belt to WWF TV, leading to a massive legal issue between the two companies, but one of probably the most compelling and realistic storylines of the Golden Era, in my opinion. He literally would parade that belt on WWF TV until they received a cease and desist, and then he would use an old WWF Tag Team Championship belt because it was almost the same size, and they would just blur it out on TV. It was an amazing storyline. It was sold off really well by Flair and Bobby Heenan, and it really, really, was a jab in the eye of WCW at the time. I mean, they wanted him to cut his hair. They wanted him to change his name to Spartacus and wear a diamond earring. Sounds like what WWE tried to do to Karrion Kross. Ich. All right. WWF New Generation is the topic of the day. So, the Golden Era was the era when Hulk Hogan and Macho Man Randy Savage, Andre the Giant, they were the top guard, right? The Golden Era ended when when steroids became illegal. That's 100% a fact. The Golden Era ended when steroids became illegal. And because of that, they had to find a new way to sell their product. That brought about the New Generation. The New Generation lasted from roughly, I would say, 93 to 97, like it says. But you could also make an argument that roughly around 91 to 97, leading into the Attitude Era. Attitude Era started somewhere between 97 and 99, 96. Your stars for the New Generation were guys like Bret Hart. I mean, Jiminy Christmas. Let's just look at this right here. No, I don't want to go. No, I don't want to go. Whoa, that's a lot of people. That some of them are dead. This is the New Generation. Like, it's crazy who was involved in it when you look back at it. That is a really crappy poster. But your mainstays for the New Generation, the guys that it was built around, Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, Yokozuna, I would say probably British Bulldog, Razor Ramon and Diesel until Scott Hall and Kevin Nash went to WCW. Lex Luger until he was on a handshake deal and then went back to Nitro. Yokozuna, Sonny Electric Braves, Luna Vachon, Jeff Jarrett was a big influence later on with it. Like Doink the Clown, Goldust debuted during this time period. Rikishi, Crush. Well, it's Fatu. It's Rikishi. Smoking Guns, Men on a Mission. Like the Kama Mustafa, Erwin R. Shyster, Ted DiBiase, who was a holdover from the Golden Era. But like these are the wrestlers when I think about what it means to be a member of the new generation. Yes, Adam Bomb. Ahmed Johnson, like this was the main and mid card all right, and the tag teams all right here, right? So, I mean, the logo changed. The logo was changed to the side tilted WWF. Neon colorways. Everybody almost had jobs. By that I mean you had guys who were, repo men and plumbers, dentists, hockey guys, and baseball guys. Yeah, and a NASCAR driver who got really bored, and a tax accountant. Like the new generation was this era where the frames were smaller, and even your bigger guys and your built guys weren't necessarily body guys like Ultimate Warrior, and like where you could look at and see muscles upon muscles, right? Hulk Hogan, Ultimate Warrior, like just these huge Adonis-looking individuals that were popular the late 70s through the 80s. These wrestlers were more svelte. They were, quite a few of them were very much tactician wrestlers. Shawn Michaels had an amateur background. Bret Hart and Owen Hart both did. So did Jim the Anvil Neidhart. There was a bigger emphasis on grappling with some of these guys than there previously was with WWF superstars. So, and then you had very talented big men. You had super talented big men. Fatu, a.k.a. Rikishi, Yokozuna, who was Rodney Fatu, his brother, and Bam Bam Bigelow, very large-bodied individuals. Savio Vega was another one. Super talented. Tugboat, Earthquake came in as to take the places of these bigger giants. Andre had retired and later passed away, but by this time, you didn't have necessarily the quote-unquote freak show aspects of guys like Andre and King Kong Bundy and George the Animal Steel to sell that, but you had guys like Earthquake, who was a legitimate amateur wrestler, who was a legitimate strongman, and a legitimate practitioner of sumo. John Tenta was a great big man heel, super athletic. Then you had Tugboat, I can't remember the name off the top of my head, also known as, I believe he was also known as Tidal Wave, when they were the Natural Disasters. And he, he's related to both the Wyndham Rotundas and the Runnels family, wrestling royalty, as well as, big amateur. He wasn't one-man gang, though, during New Generation, Rec. Remember that. He was Akeem, the African Dream, because subtle racism still existed as well. Not saying it was great on all fronts, but it's the era that I grew up watching. And I have a lot of fond memories watching it. You had Iron Man matches between Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart that were fantastic. You had the come up storyline. Oh, yes, he was another big dude who was just fantastic in the ring. Absolutely. One Man Gang / Akeem. Absolutely. During this time, Dusty Rhodes wrestled for WWF, which was weird. He came out in polka dots. And if Dusty Rhodes can show up at WrestleMania in a black and yellow polka dot outfit at 300 pounds and have all the confidence in the world, you can too do anything, damn it. Twin Towers tag team? Yeah, you had the Twin Towers. You had the Road Warriors as a tag team. The Hart tag team was kind of give and go. Men on a Mission was your two big tag teams that were kind of the big push. That were legitimate tag teams that came in together was Men on a Mission and the Smoking Guns. And then you had your hodgepodge tag teams that got thrown together. And then you had Diesel and Shawn Michaels. You had the Hart Boys who wrestled together. IRS and Ted DiBiase wrestled together. And it was a very interesting time because there was a torch passing, right? And business wasn't the greatest for pro wrestling at the time. WCW was considered a poor man's knockoff. They were doing a lot of the same thing because they had a lot of guys who used to work for Vince working for him. Kevin Sullivan was in the booking committee for him. Ole Anderson was still hard-nosed about what worked and what didn't. I mean, outside of the Four Horsemen and Sting, he kind of had a lot of struggling stars at WCW, too, until Hogan and Macho Man went over. Once they came in, and then you had Eric Bischoff get set up as the vice president of operations for them, and he was working in the creative, and he was writing the show, and he was doing the broadcasts. And the NWO storyline happened, which helped kickstart the Monday Night Wars, which then helped kickstart the Attitude Era. WCW was a weak number 2. It wasn't as strong as people want to remember. AWA was a bigger threat, especially early on and through the 80s, than WCW was. Vern Gagne's territory. If Vern had the money to keep that going, I don't know if Vince would have succeeded, to be completely honest. If Vern and Jim Crockett would have been able to partner up and not fight as much as a lot of the territory guys did, I think we'd be talking about wrestling in a whole different manner at this point. But Vince won, and here we are. A lot of the stars that you associate with the Attitude Era made their bones and made their careers during the new generation. 1, 2, 3 Kid, Sean Waltman, debuted during this time period and showed that someone who was a welterweight and a smaller guy could carry. Waltman is an anomaly amongst everybody anyway. He kind of became the measuring stick when it came to whether or not guys can work in the ring or not. Because, like, Shawn Michaels is famous for saying, if you can't work with Kid, you just can't work. Which is what he said about, he was former ECW champion Shane Douglas. Gee, Christmas. Razor Ramon debuted during this time period. Scott Hall, he had come from WCW, where he was the Diamond Stud, and debuted in WWF as Razor Ramon. Kevin Nash debuted as Diesel, as Shawn Michaels' bodyguard. Owen Hart debuted first as the Blue Blazer, and then later as Owen Hart, and was really, really building headway. God, who else? Undertaker debuted in 1991, but was the face of the company until 2021. You had Kane debut during this, initially as a dentist, but he would later become Kane when they fixed that storyline and made that storyline great. That was awesome. Let me see here. The Portuguese Man of War. Still find that funny. The guy wore a jockstrap on his face. It was great. Bam Bam Bigelow returned because he wrestled in the '80s and then came back as a very talented big man. There's so many great wrestlers, and that list that was on that poster is just the tip of the iceberg. We didn't have a whole lot of women wrestling. A lot of the women, like Luna Vachon, Sherry Martel, Sunny, they were very much like, you had some women's matches. You had some. But it was also an era where they did kill off the women's scene for a while, which really bothered me. Like, Allegra Blaze was the women's title holder. You had Bull Nakano, who came in and wrestled. You also had, like, Luna Vachon and Sunny. Sable debuted during this time period. But women's wrestling was on its way out with the WWF at the time. And Crush would go through a couple character changes. Goldust's debut was amazing. You had Vader, Big Van Vader, who came over after getting fired from WCW, who was just a legend in this poster. Like, the pictures on these posters, I would say 95. Just thinking about it, just looking at some of the costuming, like Vader, the mask. Ludwig Borga, fucking Nazi. Jesus. But yeah, so that was the new generation. The new generation was kind of this hopeful change in professional wrestling away from the heavily implied steroid use of the previous day into something else. And it didn't go over really the greatest, unfortunately, but it did go over. And honestly, thank God for Austin 316, because if it wasn't for that, it would have gone on for a little bit longer than it should have, really. The Attitude Era was a much better era for wrestling. You had the Monday Night Wars come to a climax during the Attitude Era. You had everybody was just getting paid boatloads of money. Very similar to what's going on right now. The difference is the wrestling's better now. You've got WWE still doing what WWE does, which is, oh, you're competition, so we're going to counter program you. It's stupid. But WWE is going to WWE, and they're going to try to be the only one standing. When they've been told multiple times, you don't need to do that. It's better for everybody if we have all of these companies, because everybody gets a chance to wrestle, and we all get a chance to make money. Why are we doing it this way? Well, because this is the way Vince done it. Seemed to work out pretty good for him. Stop. Just stop. But yeah, so I mean, it's a short rant, but that's the new generation, and I have a lot of soft spots for the new generation. It's when I really came. It was during my formative years. A lot of the faces that I recognize, a lot of my favorite wrestlers are from this era. I am 100% a Bret Hart guy when it comes to the wrestling ability and in-ring work. Not so much as a human being anymore. Same thing with Michael Hickapotamus. I mean, Shawn Michaels. And same thing with, I love The Undertaker, but I cannot stand Mark Calloway. I miss Scott Hall. I watched him go through recovery with Jake Roberts in the resurrection of Jake the Snake. And I wish he could still be with us, because I would love to see him do his thing and be on a podcast. Him and Nash would just be awesome to listen to. Him, Nash and Waltman, especially now that they're all sober and clean. That'd be so much fun to listen to. So, I mean, you still had guys from the Golden Era come in. You had guys like Lex Luger was in and out during this era. You had the Lex Express. That was when they tried to make Lex the new version of Hogan. That was awesome. Hogan did come back and have a world title reign and did Hogan things after. I don't like Hogan. Ultimate Warrior came back for a short stint and got fired very fast. So, like, you had guys who did come back from that era. Well, even Kama was Papa Shango, but he dropped a bunch of weight and got into shape and used his fighter background. Like, Tatanka had like a 19-match winning streak at one point in time. He was undefeated in the WWF for a long time until he wrestled Ludwig Borga, and they decided to put Borga. I don't know. Man, wrestling's weird, dude. Wrestling is so weird. Like, I love Doink the Clown. Matt Bourne was a psycho. Like, just, I hated Jeff Jarrett as a wrestler, but I kind of like him as a human being. Like, it's so weird, man. And I love it. I love it because it's weird. I love it because it tells these stories. And some of these stories are told over and over and over again. And sometimes you just like to hear the same story again, you know? Maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm the weird one. I don't know. You're probably right. But let's move on, shall we? Dirt Sheet Reports. First and foremost, we are going to discuss the passing of SIVA Alpha. It was reported on July 16th, 2026 by his family that Max Toagaga, known to the wrestling world as SIVA Afi, from his time in the WWF had passed away. Afi started wrestling in 1974 under the tutelage of Peter Maivia, the Grand High Chief, and Steve Rickard. Afi would spend 4 years wrestling the island territories and even held the New Zealand Heavyweight Championship at one point in time. Afi went to the United States in 1978 to wrestle and spent time wrestling in Canada, Australia, and Japan as well, building a name for himself amongst other wrestlers. In 1986, Afi was signed to the WWF, where he was packaged as Superfly Afi, the cousin of Jimmy Snuka, though they were not related. Afi was Samoan. Jimmy Snuka is from Fiji. Not all Polynesians are the same or in the same family. A lesson people need to learn sometimes. SIVA Afi was never in the main event scene during the time of the WWF. He did work with the likes of Bret Hart, Randy Savage, and Ted DiBiase, but these were, house show matches and undercard matches. But those are big names to be wrestling with, especially during the 80s. Afi would wrestle until 1997. He left the WWF in 1988, but he continued to work on international territories and international dates. Later, in 1997, Toagaga would serve 10 years of a 15 to 40-year sentence for his part in the 1996 robbery, kidnapping, and burglary as the getaway driver. Thanks to a series of appeals against his original sentence, Toagaga was released in 2007 and deported back to Samoa. It's unfortunate that his life took that turn, but I hope he finds peace and that he found peace, especially back in Samoa. All right, let's do the news rundown, huh? Oh, yeah, we got non-company specific wrestling news. Reported on July 16, 2026, it appears we were close to some signings for former WWE talent. Quite a few of the 90-day non-compete clauses are coming up soon, so we can be seeing some familiar faces from the WWE in the wrestling world. The list includes Taylor Rotunda, formerly known as Bo Dallas, Tommy Budgeon, also known as Aleister Black, Tia Trinidad, known in the WWE as Zelina Vega, and Samuel Shaw, also known as Dexter Lumis, with a few others not mentioned or mentioned. We know that the Motor City Machine Guns are on this list as well. It is unknown as to where these stars will land if they continue to wrestle at all. Tia Trinidad is a model and influencer as well as Twitch streamer who is highly active on social media and has made a killing doing so. Taylor Rotunda is a real estate agent in Florida, and Sam Shaw is an amazing artist. You also have guys like Tommy Budgeon, who has a wrestling school as well as a trained mixed martial artist. So there are career options for many of these talented released wrestlers from the WWE after WrestleMania 42. However, I think we will see AEW, TNA, and some select indies pick up some of these wrestlers. I think Sam Shaw will go back to TNA. I really do. I'm not sure what Tommy and Tia are going to do. Tommy had a run as Mordecai Black in AEW and potentially burnt that bridge. Not as bad as I believe Punk did at one point in time. So we can see where that's at. He still has both Buddy Murphy and Brody King in AEW that can go to bat for him. They're a part of his former stable. Brody King is his former tag team partner. So we will see. I can also see them going to doing the same thing that Cross has done and do a bunch of indies like MLW. Yeah, Buddy is close to coming back. It's been almost 2 years. God, I can't wait to see Buddy come back. He's one of my favorites. But I can see Tommy Budgeon and Tia going to do the same thing that Scarlett and Killer Cross did. MLW, GCW, bunch of other indies. Shotzi's done the same thing. Matt Riddle's done the same thing. So I think that's possible. We'll see. I could also see them going to Japan and doing some dates for like DDT or All Japan or New Japan. Maybe we would get Tia Trinidad in one of the Joshi promotions like Stardom, which could be really cool. I think that would be really cool. Like I said, I think Sam Shaw's going to go back to TNA, where his roots are. Before he was in NXT, he was in TNA and was very much a similar character to his Dexter Lumis character that he played in NXT in his early WWE days. Not so much the Sam Shaw that he was with Uncle Howdy. Now, there have been rumors that Bo Dallas, Sam Shaw, Eric the Red, and Gacy could all keep the faction together and show up at somewhere like AEW, which could be fun. But AEW's got a huge roster right now, and I don't think they need another one huge faction or two this many WWE trained talent. I think there are other wrestling companies that they can go and get over in that they could do far better and not get washed away in the rinse. I think if they go, you're kind of just throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Not everybody should land in WWE or AEW, in my opinion, because they are fantastic wrestlers and used to a system. There are so many promotions out there. I would like to see some of them maybe go up to Maple Leaf Pro and work under Scott D'Amore. Go to NWA, work under Corgan, and help with some of that. Because, oh dear God, do I have some opinions, and I might have to do an editorial episode just to get those opinions out. Because, dear God, do I have some opinions about the NWA Power product. God. But I don't know. Because the last time Bo Dallas got released, he just sold houses. That's what he did. Now, granted, he's not dating Liv Morgan anymore, which is good for him. But he's definitely got the farm. He's got the family. His family's been through a lot. I know he spends a lot of time with JoJo and the kids and with his dad, who's not had the greatest health, and their parents. So, who knows? Who knows? I do blame WWE for not writing the Mr. Howdy storyline well, because that could have been great, and when that got white hot, they completely backed off from it. Then I heard it was because of injuries and whatnot, but they killed a potentially great thing. Anyway, now on to AEWs. As of July 14th, multiple sources are reporting that AEW, All Elite Wrestling, is taking legal action against Ring Productions LLC. Initially reported by Brandon Thurston from PostWrestling.com, AEW is seeking payment for a sponsorship agreement that All Elite had entered into with Ring to promote the movie Queen of the Ring, a biopic about women's wrestling pioneer Mildred Burke. They entered into this agreement in January of 2025. According to the report, the agreed sponsorship fee was $350,000, and Ring had paid $250,000 by May of 2025. The last $100,000 was due by February 28, 2026. Now, months later, AEW and their legal team are seeking that payment through the courts. The total due to AEW as per the agreement is $105,000 for the sponsorship and talent fees for promoting the movie on social media and at events, including the 2025 Revolution pay-per-view. AEW is also seeking an additional 1.5% based on the late payment and interest due as per their agreement. Notable members of the AEW roster had also acted in the film, including Toni Storm, Britt Baker, and Camille. The film failed to meet expectations at the box office, grossing just over $632,000 upon release, which could explain the lack of payment. Now, in correction, they're not necessarily going directly to court with this. They are going into arbitration as per the way AEW kind of handles legal proceedings anyway. But Tony wants his money. He wants his people to get their money. I kind of want to see the movie. Mildred Burke was like the woman wrestler of the time, and she started back in the scientific era, and I kind of really want to see how the movie was. But I'm not going to pay $7 on YouTube to watch it. Reported by Cassidy Haynes of BodySlam.net, it appears that Sami Callihan has been working for All Elite Wrestling in a backstage capacity. It has been confirmed by AEW sources that Sami has been working on the last few dates of the AEW tour at Clearwater, Florida, Roanoke, Virginia, and Boston, Massachusetts. Sources close to Haynes noted that Sami was working as a backstage producer. It is unclear as to if Sami is currently on contract with Tony Khan's promotion, but if Sami has had a hand in some of the wild and successful matches in the last few weeks, it's not going to take long for Tony to lock Sami down with a contract as a backstage producer. Sami fits perfectly with what AEW is currently doing. We said last podcast, Sami is going to be fine. Sami is going to land on his feet. He's going to get a job somewhere, or he's going to run his own promotion out of Ohio, and he's going to do great things. I thought Sami might have ended up working as a producer for NWA. I thought Corgan was going to scoop him up and put him to work because, again, I think I'm going to do an editorial on this. I think they need it. But Sami's vision, the way Sami views wrestling as both a business as well as from the athlete perspective, is very, very good for Tony. I think Sami is a good voice for Tony to listen to when it comes to how matches should be built. Sami producing matches and making the call on the mic to the ref and working with the talent is a fantastic idea. I'm very happy for Sami, and I can't wait to see what he does for AEW in the future. I'm wondering what tricks he's got up his sleeve for redemption this coming weekend. Because dear God, Sami's nuts. Like, Sami is amazing. He's done everything from death match to intergender matches. He has been in the industry for years. He's one of the CZW lessons. Oh God, yes! If you get Sami and Bryan Danielson working together on shows, AEW is going to be unstoppable now. Like that, like you put those two together. You don't even need to do that. You put one on Dynamite and one on Collision. That's all you have to do. That's all you have to do. Because they're going to talk. They're going to make sure things are consistent. They're going to make sure the product's good. You have them do. There's so much potential there. There's so much potential there. It's great. It's fantastic. It's over the top, really. Like, I'm very happy about this if you can't tell. Joseph Courier of Wrestling Observer reports that the voice of a generation and one of the current voices of AEW special events, Jim Ross, is staying positive heading into major surgery soon. On his own Grow with JR podcast, Ross explained that he'll be having surgery to install a shunt to help remove excess fluid from his brain, with the aim of helping his memory and balance issues that he's been dealing with over the last few years. The surgery is set for August of this year, so we won't, after that point, be hearing JR on the mic for a while. Now, if you are a fan of JR's, you understand that he also battles with Bell's palsy. He's had I think he's had a heart attack and a stroke as well. So I hope the surgery goes well for him. I don't want to see anybody die under surgery. I have my own personal opinions of Jim Ross and some of the statements he has made in the past to talent backstage. We won't discuss that here. But I don't want to see anybody die necessarily, for the most part, depending on who it is. All right. Moving on to World Wrestling Entertainment. According to Fightful's Jeremy Lambert, Adam Pearce will once again be wearing two hats as an authority figure in WWE. For the June 17th episode of SmackDown, Pearce will be in place as acting general manager for SmackDown, a role he filled after the Night of Champions. With Nick Aldis currently out after being attacked by Gunther, again, mind you, on the July 10th episode of SmackDown, Pearce announced his stepping into the role on his own X account. With the events of Saturday night's main event, it appears we have more to discuss when we get to the events section regarding this, so stay tuned. From everything that I've seen, is Adam Pearce is going to be running SmackDown and Raw as the general manager for the time being. I don't know what the full-on plan is with Nick Aldis. I have some suspicions. We'll talk about that when we get done, when we talk about Saturday night's main event. With women's champion Rhea Ripley still out for surgery on her injured knee, she has torn her ACL and her meniscus in her knee, so she's going to be out for a bit. A ladder match to crown the interim women's champion has been started with a qualifying tournament. 5 women will battle in a ladder match at SummerSlam for the interim title. Both Jade Cargill and Tiffany Stratton have already qualified. We are unsure who the other 3 are going to be. I waited to write up this last night until I knew the results of Raw. Raw had no women's matches at all, which was so weird. Your events in 2 weeks, week and a half. I have a feeling you're going to see one's going to remain open and it's going to be a surprise. One's probably going to be either one of the Bellas or Paige. One's probably going to be Charlotte. That's my belief. According to Fightful's Ishan Sharma, the previous reporting of Sheamus' free agent status needs to be updated. We had previously reported that Sheamus was a free agent, that he had walked out of his contract negotiations to renegotiate his contract, and that he could show up anywhere. We were wrong. Sheamus does remain under contract to the WWE, but will become a free agent on October 1st. So WWE can do with them whatever they want. He's currently injured. He's rehabbing a shoulder injury. I don't blame him for not wanting to come back for less money. It's again the same thing that's happened with the New Day, with Kofi Kingston and Xavier Woods. So we'll see where this is going. I have no idea where this is going to end up and it's going to be interesting, I think. This is another guy that I don't think needs to go to AEW. I love the idea of him and Claudio getting back together. I do. I would rather see him either retire, because he did get married like within the last 18 months, and spend time with his wife at home with their dogs, maybe start a family, and focus on his fitness influencer career that he has been fantastic with. Or I would like to see him again do the same kind of thing that Baron Corbin and Dijak did, and Killer Cross, and go to the Indies. I think it'd be better, personally, but that's just me. The kickoff event for SummerSlam took place on Sunday, July 19th, with some carryover from the Saturday night's main event from the previous night. We're going to discuss a lot of that in the aftermath section when we get to the event. But it was a part of Fanatics Fest. They had a whole weekend thing over at MSG for it. It looked really, really cool. It would have been cool to check it out, but I also don't want to ever go to New York City because that's a lot of people. And if you know me, I don't do well with people at all, ever. All right, so we're going to jump to TNA quick. In TNA news, it appears the cryptic post by Mike Santana from July 8th was a signal to the end of his TNA contract. We did not see him show up at AEW in Boston. He hasn't shown up anywhere. And his X account is kind of scrubbed clean. On the 15th, Mike was removed from the TNA roster online. And so, like, he's kind of just been moved over to the alumni section. The future for Mike Santana is still very unclear. A lot of sources are still expected to see him join the WWE by end of summer. I'm not sure what kind of exclusionary contract language is in his contract. I'm not sure what kind of exemplary period he's going to have. 90 days seems to be the industry standard. So 90 days from the 15th of this month, from last week, would put him mid-October, that he would be able to debut. Now, granted, I'm not sure exactly, because some of the, like, if the contract ends and you don't renew it, as opposed to a release, there's like a 30 or a 60. I'm not 100% certain. And I haven't heard anything in regards to his contract about this. So don't take my word for it. I'm probably wrong. But I do believe he's going to show up in WWE. I think WWE makes the most sense for him. I know they're very high on bringing him in. I don't know where he would fit right now, looking at a lot of the storylines. I would hate to see them just shovel anybody who has a Hispanic background into AAA. I think Mike should probably start in NXT, build into WWE. That way, by Royal Rumble next year, he can be an entrant in Royal Rumble, and everyone will know who he is, and he'll get a good pop. That's my own opinion, though. For whatever that's worth. And then we have some New Japan news. New Japan star talent Shota Umino has been pulled from the New Japan Pro Wrestling annual G1 Climax tournament, which had just started this month. As reported by Joseph Courier of Wrestling Observer, Umino will be out for the remainder of the tournament due to sustaining a concussion in his opening match against Zack Sabre Jr. Having watched multiple matches with Zack Sabre Jr. against guys like Kenny Omega and Will Ospreay and Bryan Danielson, yeah, I can believe that. Holy shit, Strong Style's frightening. There will be consequences for the point standings in the tournament, though. Each of the 8 remaining opponents that Umino was supposed to face will be rewarded 2 points in their totals to carry through the tournament without having to go through the matches. So the way the G1 works is there's a point scaling system, and that helps with the reseed. And as far as like the number of wins you get points per win, and total number of points helps lead you into the finals. Can get confusing. There's a reason why the tournament lasts like 2 months, and it's events everywhere. But yeah, so it sucks. Shota's an amazing wrestler. He is currently one of the faces and pillars of NJPW. I hope he gets well. I hope there's not any lasting effects for his mind and his body in regards to the concussion. As somebody who's lived through that, I don't wish that on anybody. Ever. All right, let's get to some events. We only have one real main event that we need to talk about this week, and that is WWE's Saturday night main event. It took place on July 18th at Madison Square Garden in New York City. Taking place in the most hallowed event hall in WWE history. Saturday night's main event at Madison Square Garden in New York City was a good midpoint between Night of Champions and the upcoming SummerSlam. Some storylines were extended and some new ones were developed. We're digging into the matches, and maybe there'll be some surprises by the end. In total, the event had 5 matches, taking place just weeks after the New York Knicks had won the NBA championship. It was fitting to have both Danhausen as well as some of the Knicks players available. The show itself was part of the Fanatics Fest weekend in New York, with Fanatics being a partner sponsor of the WWE. First match was a singles match between WWE United States champion Trick Williams and former Cruiserweight champion Laredo Kid from AAA. This was a late addition to the card, but man, was this match a good showing for both athletes. Trick's mix of agile fluidity and strength paired very well with Laredo Kid's high-flying lucha style. The veteran Laredo did well selling the power of Trick's offense, making Trick look like a very dominant champion. Trick in turn was able to follow Laredo's lead, making his smaller opponent look just as potent when Kid was on the offense. Overall, the story was how Trick would handle being in a bigger stage against a veteran opponent without Lil Yachty by his side. Excuse me. The crowd's response was significant. Very much enjoyed this match. With both competitors, there wasn't a lot of like heel face going on between the two, but the crowd was over with both of them. But definitely seemed way more in favor of the United States champion in this match, which makes sense. They're WWE fans, not necessarily AAA fans. Trick did get the win after dodging a top rope corkscrew and then landing his trick knee on Laredo Kid. Overall, the match was a good start to the night. It was well-paced. It showcased both the up-and-coming Trick Williams, who is going to be, I swear to you, will be a main eventer within the next year, and highlighting one of the very best luchadors from AAA with Laredo Kid. It was a very fun match to watch. After that, we had a tag team match for the WWE Women's Tag Team Championship. The champions, Paige and Brie Bella, facing Fatal Influence members Lady Reed and Fallon Henley. The Veteran Divas versus the new main eventers. Fatal Influence has been chasing Bella and Paige for the last few weeks and had even lost to the champions in a non-title match in June. Though things did seem to cool off for the initial storyline, for the Fatal Influence, the main event was perfect time for the pair to change their fortunes. Brie and Paige have years of friendship and working together to fall back on, and their veteran status makes them tried and true champions. The match itself was a solid mix of action from both sides, with each pairing working well with the other. Since winning the tag titles at WrestleMania, many had speculated that something would cause Paige and Brie to implode, but they worked well together throughout the match, and just like every other time, they've wrestled as a team. In the end, though, it was time to pass the torch. Veteran Paige counted the lights for Lady Reed. The new champions were crowned. Good story of the old guard falling to the newly anointed. A good match to show the strengths of the women's division outside of the main event picture. This was done very, very well. It was handled very, very well with the veterans putting over this younger tag team that has just debuted within the last year from NXT. We finally got gold around the waist of some of the Fatal Influence team, which is fantastic. I hope they hold on to it. I want to see them get more into the mix again. I would like to see some matches coming up for them. We won't see them probably at SummerSlam because they wrestled on this card. So I'm expecting probably who would probably wrestle for it. I'm not sure yet. They don't have any real set teams outside of these guys. So it'll be interesting to see what the next move will be. After the tag match, there was the no disqualification match between the show's favorite Danhausen and JD. I have a giant bobblehead McDonald with Dominic. I like to cry to my chicken nuggies, Mysterio. Danhausen's time to shine. Very nice. Very evil. Not the culmination of the issues between Danhausen and the Judgment Day, but a good middle point for what's going on. The story holds true to Danhausen cursing Judgment Day after they attempted to bribe him into cursing Obafemi during the King of the Ring tournament. Did not work. It did not work. That was a bad idea. Danhausen took the money but refused to curse the ruler of the world. Very, very wise. So, very nice, very evil, very, very smart Danhausen. With Judgment Day chasing him for the money ever since. And now it's come to a street fight. Danhausen wrestled in his custom New York Knicks themed gear, and JD was in the color of the Knicks rivals, the Indiana Pacers. Well played. I will say that costume made well played. JD took the lead, acting the heel by attempting to infuriate the New York fans. Very good. JD is very, very, very good at what he does as a heel. He looks like a Funko Pop doll with that giant fucking doll, but he's very good as a heel. This allowed Danhausen to throw in some offense. With Dom at ringside, the match quickly turns into a 2-on-1 fiasco, kind of a handicap situation, until 3 mini-houses joined Danhausen to make the save. While Dom and JD were taking care of the mini-houses and dealing with the small problem, Danhausen gets to his cloning machine and turns it on. Soon, help arrives in the form of Carl Anthony Townsend, Cat, of the New York Knicks. Cathausen has arrived, and his help is just the edge that Danhausen needs to beat JD via pinfall. A very fun, fan-oriented match that allowed for a lot of surprises for those in attendance. Very much a fan service match, which is fine. Fan service has its place in wrestling. I don't care what anybody says. You still have to have fun. As a fan, as a wrestler, you still have to have fun. The story is not done between the Judgment Day and Danhausen, however, and we'll discuss that very shortly. The women's singles match, there was a match between Bayley and her former protege, Lyra Valkyria. Over the last few weeks, it seems that Lyra has been losing her touch with reality. She turned on her tag partner, Bayley, blaming Bayley for their most recent loss when challenging for the women's tag titles. After losing, Lyra turned on Bayley, attacking her post-match. Then, something's been off with the loss. Throughout the match, Lyra became more and more erratic, matching her loosening grip on reality. After an inadvertent connection between Bayley's elbow and Lyra's nose, a little color helped push the new characterization of Lyra into a deeper idealization. Bayley kept up with her former apprentice, taking and giving blows in kind. Lyra was able to avoid a Bayley to belly toss and counter it with a Saka Otoshi choke. If you get a chance to see this, it was nuts. Like, it was amazing. Forcing Bayley to pass out, and Lyra wins via the submission. Post-match, Lyra does resync the submission into Bayley before power slamming Bayley onto the steel ring steps, leading her full heel turn and possibly writing Bayley off TV for a while. Now, there are rumors that Bayley's contract is coming to an end soon, but we're not 100% certain yet. The main event was a tag team match, CM Punk and Cody Rhodes versus Sami Zayn and Gunther, with the stipulation that if Sami Zayn and Gunther win, the title match for Punk's undisputed WWE Championship between him and Cody Rhodes turns into a fatal four-way. So there's a lot on the line if Punk and Cody want to keep this a one-on-one match. With animosity still boiling over since Night of Champions between all involved, it was surprising this match was set up by SmackDown General Manager Nick Aldis, especially with the stipulation that if Sami and Gunther win, they'd be added to the match between Punk and Cody at SummerSlam, making it a fatal four-way match for the undisputed WWE Championship. As expected, after the introductions, the match just turned into a chaotic brawl almost immediately. Just nothing but fists, hair, and teeth. With four of the best in modern professional wrestling in the ring, the match didn't disappoint. Each participant worked well with and against each other, and there are hints of genius of how Sami and Gunther worked together at times. As the match boiled down, Gunther nearly had the match won by pinning Cody, but Nick Aldis showed up, pulling the official out of the ring and hitting Gunther with the title. Punk was able to hit Gunther with his go to sleep and put Cody in the position for the pin, and Punk and Rhodes take the win. After the match, Punk apparently, by accident, hit Cody in the face while putting the title on his shoulder, possibly leading to problems. After the main event, Roman Reigns and the New York Knicks captain Jalen Brunson head to the ring. Roman gives Brunson a replica title belt in Knicks colors on the straps and Brunson's number 11 on the side plates. Super cool replica belt. Super, super cool for the MVP. As the OTC called for the crowd and MSG to acknowledge them both, Seth Rollins' music hits, interrupting the moment. But instead of the architect, out comes Indiana Pacer Tyrese Halliburton with a steel chair, taunting the OTC and the MVP. Using the distraction, Rollins then attacks Roman from behind, wanting to line up a stomp, but was halted by Brunson, who stood in between Rollins and Roman, refusing to move. This does give Roman time to recover, and he hits Rollins with a Superman punch and then a spear. Rollins would roll out of the ring and retreat with Halliburton behind her. Go figure, these two are facing each other in SummerSlam. The day after the matches, as Fanatic Fest was coming to a close, WWE had a SummerSlam kickoff event. In the aftermath of the previous night's event, there seemed to be some additions to the card for SummerSlam. The most impactful addition seems to be Nick Aldis versus Gunther. No stipulations have been announced for the match, but I expected this match to be very interesting. The match between Rollins and Roman was heavily promoted, as was the match between Cody and Punk. It does appear that Danhausen has a date with Dominic Mysterio on Raw, and we'll see where that leads. Dom ended up not Wrestling Danhausen. He ended up losing to Joe Hendry. And JD pissed off Oba and just got lawn darted. That's what happened. That was events, but we do have some upcoming events. Some of these we did talk about. The ones of note that we are really going to be, that I'm looking very, very forward to, but it's going to lead to a very, very busy week, are going to be AAA Fuego de Escandalo, which is going to take place on the 25th, so Friday. That's going to be on YouTube, so I'm going to be able to watch that. So we're going to do an episode of After the Bell for that. The 25th also has the NWA 78th anniversary show, which is going to be an episode of Power on Tubi. I'm going to watch that, and we're going to do a breakdown of that for After the Bell as well. So that's going to be an episode. And then we have AEW Redemption taking place in Montreal, Quebec. And that is going to get its own episode of Redemption as well. Or not Redemption, of After the Bell as well. So there's going to be 3 upcoming episodes of After the Bell. I have to figure out release schedule. I also have to figure out watch schedule for these. It's just bear with me. They will eventually get released. That's all I'm asking. Other than that, we've got WWE SummerSlam, which is a 2-night event on the 1st and 2nd of August. AEW and CMLL have Grand Slam Mexico on the 5th, which could be a really fun event. GCW is doing GCW things. They're going to be in Omaha, Nebraska on the 31st, and then they're going to be in Minneapolis for Rude Awakening. Minneapolis is going to have a bunch of indie stuff going on. SummerSlam weekend, which is going to be a lot of fun. I wish I was going up. I wish I wasn't broke. I wish I could go to all these wrestling shows. I wish I could afford to watch all these wrestling shows. Soon. But that is it, everybody. I apologize again for being sick. I also apologize for the mic issues. I don't know what's going on with that. But, because, this should work, and it's not, which I don't understand. I don't understand at all. But, thank you, everybody, for hanging out. This episode will be up on the YouTube channel on Friday. Fully edited. It will also be released for audio. Probably the 17th of next month. Audio has to take a little bit longer because I don't want to pay for extra storage space. Oh, rack that speed. That hurts the heart, bud. That hurts the heart. But thank you, everybody, for being here. We'll be back in 2 weeks. I believe that episode is August 4th. We're going to do an episode. And then we're going to have 2 weeks off, and we'll be back on the 25th. So there's going to be a lot of filler content and off-week content for the 2 weeks in between the 4th and the 25th, because I'm not going to be able to stay on schedule and do an episode on the 18th. So but we'll be back on the 4th for episode 4. And I can't wait to see everybody there. Thank you for being here. And I'll catch you all later. Goodbye.